already doing deals. Like they're trying to give you a free tire change. They're trying to give you a free car wash and all types of stuff to get out to these games. This is wild. Look at how empty this arena is. Look at how empty it is. The cheapest ticket, $6.
The WNBA playoffs were supposed to be the stage where Caitlin Clark cemented her place as the face of the league. But instead, the entire postseason has been thrown into chaos, ratings are collapsing, fans feel cheated, and the Fever are battling through with their star sidelined, leaving everyone asking the same burning question. How did the brightest talent in women's basketball end up watching from the sidelines while the
WNBA is in a panic right now? The WNBA higher-ups are panicking. They don't know what's going to happen. I already let y'all know. I showed y'all the numbers that they was concerned about the playoff ratings and what they will be for the networks. They're concerned about it already. No Caitlin Clark here to carry everybody. They don't know how these numbers are going to look. Tickets are they're already doing Black Friday sales for playoff tickets. There are teams already doing Black Friday sales for playoff tickets.
League's most important games unfold without her. And what does this shocking twist mean for the future of the WNBA? Caitlin Clark's rookie year was already the most talked about season in WNBA history, but by the middle of July 2025, everything shifted in a way no fan expected. What started as a nagging right groin issue.
In this back and forth from all the WNBA players that the league is not just Caitlin Clark. Stop acting like the league is not just Caitlin Clark. There are other people who are doing things. So Caitlin Clark has been injured, so she hasn't been playing. Since Caitlin Clark went down, the WNBA ratings have dropped over 55%
Yikes.
across the board.
Hey, guess what, guys?
The league is Caitlin Clark.
The league is Caitlin Clark.
Quickly spiraled into a lingering bone bruise that doctors warned could worsen with even the smallest misstep. Fans watched as she sat out practice after practice, her minutes cut, her energy clearly different on the court. At first, there was hope whispers that she'd be back by late August, maybe even in time to carry the Fever into a historic playoff run. But as the games stacked up and her name kept disappearing from the active roster, the reality began to set in. This wasn't just a minor setback. Indiana's star was gone, and with her absence, the entire playoff picture suddenly looked different. But that wasn't the whole story. Indiana wasn't just missing Clark. The team was hammered with injuries from every direction. Sophie Cunningham's season ended after a brutal knee blow, Ari McDonald was fighting through her own struggles, and the backcourt rotations were stretched to the breaking point. Suddenly, a roster built around Caitlin's offensive magic had to scramble for answers. Players like Kelsey Mitchell and Aaliyah Boston stepped up in huge ways, dragging the team into the playoffs when analysts had already written them off. And then came the stunner, the Fever knocking out Atlanta in a nail-biting Game 3 without their superstar. It was proof that the team had fight, but at the same time, it exposed the painful truth. Without Clark, they could only climb so far. And what happened next would shock everyone. For Indiana, Caitlin Clark wasn't just a star player, she was the system. Every offensive set, every defensive adjustment, every opponent's game plan revolved around her. Without her, the Fever had to reinvent themselves on the fly. Suddenly, the team that was supposed to shock the league with Clark's three-point barrages and floor-stretching creativity was forced into grinding, scrappy basketball. It was a painful transformation. Opponents no longer feared Indiana's perimeter shooting. Defenses collapsed on Aaliyah Boston, clogging the paint and daring the Fever's guards to beat them. Games that used to be electric turned into low-scoring battles. Fans who had once tuned in to watch Clark light up the scoreboard now watched a team clawing for every bucket. And yet, something unexpected emerged. Kelsey Mitchell stepped into a leadership role that many thought she couldn't handle. Grace Berger, a player most analysts barely mentioned before the season, found herself carrying key minutes. Even players like N.A. Alyssa Smith and Christy Wallace had to adapt, doing the dirty work, pushing through fatigue, keeping the team alive. The Fever weren't the highlight machine they were with Clark, but they became something else, resilient. Their win over Atlanta proved that even without their superstar, they had the grit to fight. But it was clear this wasn't sustainable. Every game wore them down. Every possession exposed their lack of depth. They could steal a game, maybe even a series, but everyone knew the clock was ticking. And hanging over it all was the unshakable reality. This wasn't just Indiana's problem. The whole league was about to feel the impact of Clark's absence. But what came next would send shockwaves through the WNBA. The WNBA has never had a rookie like Caitlin Clark. She didn't just boost attendance, she transformed it. Teams that used to play in half-empty arenas were suddenly selling out when Indiana came to town. Merchandise sales exploded. Ratings for Fever games crushed records. Sponsors lined up, and networks finally gave the WNBA the spotlight fans had been demanding for years. But when Clark went down, that momentum collapsed almost overnight. TV ratings dipped by more than 50% in the weeks following her injury. Fans who had built their summer schedules around watching her play started losing interest. Entire playoff matchups that should have been must-see television felt like background noise. Without Clark, the WNBA lost its spark. It wasn't just numbers, it was the atmosphere. Walk into Gainbridge Fieldhouse during the early season, and the energy was electric. Fans wore her jersey, kids held up signs, media outlets crowded the sidelines. After the injury, the buzz was gone. Even when Indiana pulled off their upset against Atlanta, the national spotlight barely flickered. No Caitlin meant no viral moments, no highlight reels dominating social media, no storylines to carry the league. And that's what makes this so devastating. The WNBA finally had a superstar capable of bridging the gap between diehard fans and casual viewers, of bringing women's basketball into mainstream conversations. And now, just as the league needed her most, she's on the sidelines. For the Fever, it's a competitive nightmare. For the league, it's a financial and cultural setback. But the conversation didn't stop there. As the playoffs dragged on, questions started swirling not just about the injury itself, but about how it was handled, whether more could have been done, and what the future of the league really looks like without her. And the controversy that followed would leave everyone divided. When the news broke that Caitlin Clark would officially miss the rest of the season, the shock quickly turned into a storm of questions. Fans, analysts, and even former players began asking the uncomfortable thing no one wanted to say out loud. Did the Fever handle this right? Some reports suggested the team might have underestimated the seriousness of the injury early on. She was still practicing in limited bursts weeks after the initial diagnosis. Some insiders whispered that maybe, just maybe, the Fever had gambled on her toughness, hoping she could push through the pain long enough to deliver a playoff miracle. But that gamble backfired. Instead of a dramatic return, they ended up with a superstar shut down indefinitely. Then came the outside voices. Lisa Leslie, a legend of the game, went on record saying Clark should be protected at all costs. Her advice was blunt: shut her down, think long-term, and don't risk burning out the brightest star the league has seen in decades. Many agreed with her. Others argued the Fever owed it to the fans and to the momentum of the WNBA itself to give Clark every chance to come back. And of course, the rumors exploded online. Social media feeds filled with speculation that maybe she could have returned in a limited role. Some claimed the league itself pressured Indiana to be cautious, fearing the PR disaster if Clark re-injured herself on national TV. Others pushed conspiracy theories, suggesting the WNBA was protecting her image more than her health. None of it was proven, but the conversations wouldn't stop. At the heart of it all was the same frustration. Fans wanted answers, and instead, they were given silence. The Fever played it safe. The league played it careful. And the result was the playoffs everyone had been waiting for felt like they'd been robbed of their main attraction. But out of that storm of criticism came a bigger question: what does justice for Caitlin Clark even look like? Justice, in this case, doesn't mean winning a title. It doesn't mean Clark forcing her way back onto the court for a few heroic minutes. For many fans, justice means protecting her future and ensuring that the league learns from this moment. Clark isn't just a player. She's the cornerstone of the WNBA's next era. If she's rushed, if she's broken, if her career is shortened because of poor management, the league won't just lose a star, it will lose credibility. Justice means recognizing that protecting her health now is the only way to guarantee the future the league has been promising its fans. But justice also means respect. Respect for what she gave the Fever in just one season. respect for how she carried the league to new heights before her body gave out, respect for the fact that even while sidelined, she remains the biggest talking point in women's basketball. The Fever's upset over Atlanta wasn't just about proving they could survive without her, it was about showing the league that this isn't just one-player basketball. But everyone knows the truth. Clark's shadow loomed over that win, and every victory in her absence feels bittersweet. Justice also means accountability. The league must reassess how it handles its stars. Better medical transparency, stronger support systems, smarter scheduling that doesn't grind players down. If the WNBA wants to keep its brightest lights shining, it needs to protect them instead of squeezing every drop of energy out for ratings and ticket sales. And finally, justice means acknowledgement. Fans deserve honesty. Players deserve protection. And Clark herself deserves the assurance that this moment won't define her career, but instead strengthen it. She will come back, but when she does, it must be on her terms, not as a desperate attempt to rescue a broken season. Because if the Fever and the WNBA truly want justice for Caitlin Clark, they have to prove that her story isn't ending here, it's only beginning. But what's next could determine whether this league rises stronger or falls apart under the weight of its own missed opportunity. The Fever's playoff miracle, without Caitlin Clark, is inspiring. But even the most loyal fans know the reality. Their path gets harder with every step. Beating Atlanta was one thing, facing the league's giants is another. Without Clark's perimeter shooting to spread the floor, Indiana becomes predictable, relying on Aaliyah Boston's power inside and hoping the guards can hit enough shots to stay alive. It's not impossible, but it's a razor-thin margin of error. Still, fans keep asking, what happens when Clark comes back? All reports suggest she'll be fully ready for the 2026 season. That raises even bigger questions. Will the Fever build smarter around her? Will the coaching staff manage her minutes better? Will the league itself step in to make sure stars like Clark are given real protection instead of being treated like ticket-selling machines? There's also the issue of momentum. The WNBA can't afford to let the hype that Clark created vanish into thin air. Sponsors and networks bought into the league because of her. If they don't deliver on that promise, will the money still be there in 2026? Fans want to believe this is just a pause, not a derailment. But the WNBA has to prove it. And then there's the personal side. Clark herself has stayed remarkably composed through the chaos. No angry posts, no finger pointing, no distractions. She's shown up to games, cheered on her teammates, and reminded everyone why she's more than just a scorer, she's a leader. But behind the calm exterior, you have to wonder, how much does it eat at her to sit on the sidelines while her team fights for survival without her? Because the next chapter of her career won't just be about scoring points. It will be about how she and the league rise from this moment, and whether this absence becomes a footnote or the turning point in her legacy. And that sets the stage for the final question. What does this season really mean for the WNBA? For years, critics have said the WNBA needed a superstar to carry it into mainstream relevance. Caitlin Clark became that superstar overnight. But the league's dependence on her has now been exposed in the harshest way possible. One injury, one absence, and suddenly viewership plummets, arenas lose energy, and the playoffs, the very climax of the season, feel hollow without her presence. This is the defining test for the WNBA. Can it build something sustainable beyond one player? Or has the league leaned too heavily on Clark's star power, only to see its progress torpedoed the moment she went down? The contrast is brutal. With Clark, the league was surging. Without her, it's scrambling. That imbalance can't continue if the WNBA wants long-term credibility. But here's the twist sometimes, crises spark change. The WNBA now has a chance to prove it's not just the Caitlin Clark show. Other stars like Aja Wilson, Breanna Stewart, and Jewel Lloyd are still playing at the highest level. The Fever themselves are proving they can still fight, even when stripped of their biggest weapon. If the league leans into this moment, showcasing depth instead of desperation, it could turn a disaster into an opportunity. Yet, the shadow of Clark remains. Every headline, every broadcast, every post-game discussion circles back to her absence. It's a reminder that for all the progress, the WNBA still hasn't answered the biggest question: can it thrive without her? And that's why this season will be remembered not just for who wins the championship, but for how the league handled the storm of losing its brightest star.